welcome to Graphic Policy Radio, comics podcast for those sort of folks who think that comics and pirates are a great idea and go better together than comics and, wait, I just totally botched my opening. We're going to have to live with that anyway. Today we have a returning guest. It's Jeremy Whitley. You may know him as the creator of Princeless and from his recent run at Marvel on the Unstoppable Wasp. He is returning to Graphic Policy Radio to talk about two of my favorite comics about pirates, Raven the Pirate Princess and the new series Sea of Thieves, based on the hit video game. Raven the Pirate Princess is full of humor, high-seas romance, and all the amazing, diverse, queer, and feminist lady pirates I wish I had as a kid, and I'm thrilled to be able to read their exploits today. So join us, and we'll be discussing all of the pirates and all of the feminism and all the hilarity and all the queerness on all these fabulous comics. Hello, Jeremy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm hearing myself in an echo. I don't know if you perhaps have some volume on somewhere.
No, let me try and turn it down. Is this any better?
Oh, no, your volume was fine. Hold on, maybe it was on my end. Say something.
Hello?
Yeah, we're good. Okay, anyway, moving right along.
Okay.
So you've been on the show a few times now, and I'm excited to have you back. One of the inspirations for having you again on the show was that we've been trying to figure out drumming up some additional sales for Raven the Pirate Princess. And it's funny because I think whenever I talk to any parents I know, I'm always telling them how important it is for them to check out Princeless, really being, I think as you said it on the panel we were on at AwesomeCon, saying that you can't have kids, you can't stop kids from liking princesses, but you can create a princess that's like actually awesome for a change. And definitely that comic has, I think, been a big draw for families. I'm always seeing moms and dads buying it for their kids. And I just want to help Raven the Pirate Princess find its biggest audience, because I just think it's like much fun. And I'm wondering if what are we going to do to make this work? For me, honestly, one of the big appeals of the series is how much romance there is in it. I'm not going to lie. I'm somebody who finds a lot of romantic subplots handled badly in a lot of comics, and I'm impressed and pleased to see one that is aimed at, it's hard for me to quite give an age range. You have kids. What does the publisher generally say for ages what and up generally for Raven the Pirate Princess?
Oh, that's been a question of some debate, I think, for us, because it's definitely aimed at a slightly more mature audience than Princeless. I mean, specifically, there's the romance, but there's also a little more in the way of actual fighting and stabbing.
Exactly.
I think I talk about the fact that in Princeless, in the first issue, I gave Adrienne a sword, and then she can't stab anybody because that is a comic that is for children.
Yeah.
So, Raven, we have a little more leeway that way. I think we've been trying to go a little more YA. I think, like Princeless, it's sort of grown a bit as it's gotten a little older. And, I think the intention is that with every year, Raven gets a little older as well. So, I feel comfortable with saying it's in sort of a 12 and up range.
Yeah. To me, it's not like it's inappropriate. It's just for anybody younger. It's just I wonder if below a certain age, kids are just I don't care that much about kissing subplots. You know what I mean? And I don't really have a sense of that. I think that this is just such a fabulous romance comic, and I don't really find that there's that many great ones out there. So that's really one of the appeals of it for me personally. Did you approach it that way from the start? I mean, did it just end up that way?
I think that's, part of the impetus of, what got me started on Raven is that there was a lot of questions from fans of Princeless about Adrienne's sexuality and, what she's interested in romantically. And largely because of what Princeless is about, I mean, the answer is not. She's not really interested in romance. That's not her thing. Specifically not a book about her, finding somebody she's romantically interested in, but her not needing a person, be they male or female, to save her. In Raven, I wanted to touch on, that question of sexuality and queerness that we didn't get to touch on in Princeless. So I think it's a thing for me that, like, there's been a lot of half-hearted attempts in especially mainstream comics and queer representation where they make sure to point out that a character is gay and at some point have them proclaim it loudly in the story and then not actually do anything romantic or have their romantic partner die at some point in the story so that they don't actually have to deal with the romance portion of it. And that wasn't something I wanted to do specifically because that is done so often and so sort of poorly. And I wanted to deal with the romantic stories, and I wanted to really delve into that part of Raven as a character, and beyond that, to some extent, like Princeless, it's a coming of age story, and you would, if it were a coming of age story in a non-comic book, especially if it were about a heterosexual relationship, like that stuff would be there. So I wanted to really make sure that not only did we do it, but we got it right. Not only is it something that I've wanted to do, but it's something that I've sort of run by sensitivity readers who have more sort of firsthand experience. Make sure that we are doing it right. I think like any romantic subplot, there are probably going to be people that don't love it, but I think the majority of the feedback we've gotten has been very positive.
Cool. I realized I didn't really do much of a setup, actually, introducing folks to the series, but I think just real quick, basically you had, Princeless, which was this huge breakout success for all ages, feminist, just diverse representation, fantasy series that really solves a lot of the problems in old fairy tales and actually gives people something that's truly funny and fun for all ages to enjoy. And in it, you introduced Raven, the pirate princess, and she was such a great character that, she just needed her own series, right? Is that pretty much how it happened?
I think, Raven was initially introduced in our free comic book day story that we did, and I thought it was a fun chance for me to, tell a story that I thought would be a good story for free comic book day, and that it gives us gives people who hadn't been reading the series a nice sort of introduction from Raven's point of view, not knowing what's going on in the story either. But it's, we don't sort of reprint something that already exists, which is my pet peeve with free comic book day, where you just get a book you've already paid money for free. So I wanted something new, but, not mired in the continuity of the two books that were already out. So we created Raven with that in mind. And even from that outset, I wanted Raven to be a queer character because, we talked about that already and the need for that representation. But, I think, she was so fun in that story that we sort of blew that up into a whole, 4-issue arc of Princeless. And, at the end of that, it didn't feel right for her to continue to stick around in that story. And, she's so sort of high-powered that her and Adrian are sort of constantly clashing when they're there. So I feel like that would make Adrian's quest both a lot easier from a physical standpoint and a lot harder from a emotional one. I wanted to definitely give her own space to do, this bigger story with her.
With the character.
Yeah.
In terms of bringing in the whole pirate setting, because that is sort of a theme of this episode, dealing with two different pirate-related series, were there, were there particular pirate story romances or just pirate stories in general that you're kind of drawing from here?
There are a couple historical pirate characters that I like a lot. I think it's an interesting setting because you get, in actual history, a couple of real strong female characters who are, filling a military role that would not have likely been possible in most, settings because they're on the high seas, because they are not abiding by rules and laws of society. You have several really, really great actual women doing, amazing stuff throughout history, both in Asia and in Europe and some in America as well. That sort of all came together to sort of inspire what I wanted to do, and I like. There are a lot of things I like about piratical history in general. That it's a very democratic setup where it's historically people who die on missions, they their money would be passed on to their living relatives, and they had actual health care to what extent they survived as pirates, and everybody was sort of on the same footing as compared to the military settings at that time where there was a commander, and then there was the sort of aristocracy running things, and then there was everybody else.
Yeah, you definitely hit on, I think, both the sort of pirate internal politics and structure within the series, and definitely see some of the female pirate history as well.
Yeah, and I liked, we hit on a couple of things that are, I don't know, to some extent overtly political, but at the same time kind of shouldn't be. There's a bit in, I think, real early in the second volume of Raven where she's sort of doing that pirate thing of insulting and name calling, and Katie brings up the question of is that what we want to do? Is that what motivates us? Do we want to run each other down, or is this a place of positivity, of building people up, of teaching? And they sort of make that decision on the fly that it is, the ship is going to be democratic, that Raven is in charge in cases of emergency, but that everybody is going to have a say.
I also really adore Sunshine's line when she's like, so who here feels like you do best when you're being abused? And Sunshine is like, me, shut up, you all don't know where I'm from. It's such a great moment. The ensemble cast, of which you introduce a great deal of characters all at once and develop over time, is pretty incredible. I really do love them all. How did you design, I don't know, what is it, 12 amazing women characters across for the series? Especially the greatest of all, Katie King, but we'll get back to her in a later.
I owe a lot to that to Ro and Ted, who were my artists on the first 3 volumes, because I wrote the first volume, the first 4 issues sort of all at once, and I had, the major introductions in there of the sort of principal 5 characters at that point, and that it's Raven, Jayla, Sunshine, Katie, and Jimena, who are that main cast that we sort of take our time introducing in those first couple issues. And then, there are a couple other characters that I described sort of vaguely in the first couple scripts. And at some point, Ron and Ted came to me and were like, so how many people are on this ship? And I was like, well, enough to run a ship. I'm not really sure how many we need to have. And, we settled on, I think there's a dozen characters total, I think. And they sort of sat down and designed the rest of the characters, with sort of vague instructions that, I wanted them to be as diverse as possible. I wanted to make sure that we had a couple of characters who, we had a character in Amira who has a hijab, and we have a couple of characters who are a little more, I guess, diverse in the way they express gender. Like Sid is not, she's sort of genderless in a way. She's, she hasn't expressed that specifically in the comic, but that is the way she dresses, the way she expresses herself.
Soft switch thing going on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what we were going for there. I got this, these pictures of these characters, and I was like, oh, I love all of these designs. I need to make up stories for all of these characters now. So, literally at the point that I got those, they were drawing, I think it's issue 3 when we pull in the larger cast full of, characters that are at the bar. And, they sent me this, and I started writing issue 5, and I was like, I need backstories for all of these characters. I need to have them all introduced by name in issue 5. So, everybody has a chance to, oh, this is this character. This character has a name. We know, there's one or two things about this character because, we are going through the whole ship and meeting everybody and at the same time trying to advance the plot in that issue. I wanted to make sure we hit all of those. And the longer we've done it, the more characters have sort of evolved, sometimes just out of what people I put into groups. Like in volume 2, there's a lot of they split up into 3 groups and characters get a chance to interact within those groups. And then sometimes those characters end up having relationships that are, go outside of that. And what I had initially envisioned, Zoe and Quinn, who that second volume, they don't really get along. Quinn thinks Zoe's kind of goofy. Zoe thinks Quinn is too serious. And then, throughout the course of that volume and the next couple of volumes, they start to see other things in each other.
Yeah, I love those opening scenes of the folks racing up the ropes and her just sort of doing the introductions of I'm on this corner. There's such a funny, believable camaraderie and jokes throughout it. What was it? Helena, who's left him? I don't know. And stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely a sort of comic where you can't not laugh multiple times throughout the issue. And I feel like a lot of the humor it's conversational humor that sort of sounds like your friends talking.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily humor that's situated in pure absurdity or things that are super zany. Which is funny because they're also in Pirate Land, which is pretty far out there to start with,
Yeah, I mean that's really, I think, my wheelhouse. That's what I love to do and love to read is these interactions that come from just real life, from being stuck, in this case, on a boat with a bunch of people. You have to interact with them. You can't help it. And that we sort of get these relationships that spring out of that naturally. And, those conversations function to be, funny, but also to move the plot forward, but also to develop the characters. So, I like to have characters that are likable in that way. So, as you sort of get this feeling that you're in this group of friends, you start to, feel warmly toward them as well, which is, of course, what makes it all that much worse when terrible things happen to them.
Yeah. I want to try to hold off on anything too spoiler related until the later part of the show, because I definitely am setting this up to be a way to lure more readers into our pirate-filled trap. So, recently you were on Twitter just sort of speaking about how the sales on the series aren't what they need to be to keep it up. Is that something that Action Lab, the publisher, sort of straight up tells you as a writer there, or is it something you're sensing, or?
Yeah, I mean it was a conversation we've had as where so we're closing in on I've already written, and the end of year 2 is being drawn right now, the last volume of that. We were having a discussion about whether or not we need to get started on year 3 and when we need to get started. I have a bunch of stuff written already, we were talking about, whether or not we need to set up a new team moving on that right now. And, Brian, my publisher, said, I don't want to cancel it. I like the book. I think it's important. But like right now, the sales do not sustain the continued making of this book. Because it is a book where the artists are paid right on, that everybody is compensated that's involved in making the book.
Good.
And
yay.
Yeah, and so it does have a real cost attached to it that not all creator-owned books do necessarily. You can always ask yourself to keep striving on something without getting paid, even if that's not ideal or easy. But there's a real point where a publisher has to look at a thing and say, all right, well, the sales are not that great and they're declining, so at some point we're going to have to reevaluate this and figure out how to move forward. And that was a conversation I didn't want to have, and a conversation we had to have. And so, before we make any kind of step forward and decide what needs to change, let's reach out to people, to the internet. I know there are, there's a smaller but very loyal fan base for this book, and say, look, this is what we need. We need to do better, because that's something I complain about that I don't think larger publishers do enough. They're
I agree.
Look, to say, look, this book is in trouble, or look, this book is not doing what it needs to do. Instead, they just cancel books, and people don't realize it's a problem until too late.
Yeah. And we look at it sensitive by how much, right? So, if something is just completely failing and there's no chance of it, staying up, that's one thing. But if something is sort of more at the margins and you feel like if you can just get a few more friends to pick this up and they get a few more friends to pick this up, I'm super invested in all of these characters. Sure, I'm invested in, finding revenge and killing the sexist, father who, all that stuff. But, I'm just really invested in the romances. I need to know how these relationships are going, and there's definitely an interesting place where one of them is right now with different potential in particular. And I need to know, God damn it. So I appreciate being given, the opportunity as a fan and supporter to know that, you guys need to drive up sales so that we could do this episode, which hopefully will make a difference. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I absolutely hope so. I think, there's a tendency to trade weight and to hold off on things, and I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else. But hopefully, I spent a lot of time with Unstoppable Wasp, telling people at Marvel, look, this book is going to perform better in trade. It's going to be something that takes off when it hits that market, and they have very specific ideas and benchmarks for what they want to do. I think this was a chance for us as a small press and me as a creator to sort of put my money where my mouth was and say, look, this is my book. I don't want this, to get canceled. I want to keep doing this. I feel like there's support out there, but it needs to become actual monetary support at some point for this book to keep going. And I think, it's definitely had an effect. It's a little difficult to see how much it has been so far. I know Amazon seems to be sold out of just about all of Raven at this point. I know some people have pre-ordered Volume 5, which is great. We want to make sure to get people on top of that too. But I've definitely heard from a couple of friends in comic book stores that they've had people coming in asking about it, which is that's ideal. We want to get that sort of business to local comic shops, because there's a lot of people there that have done a great job supporting us and are turning people on to good books like ours and others all the time. I'd like to be able to support those shops and share that community with people. I know there's people that don't have local shops or don't have anything anywhere to shop anywhere near them, or if they do have a shop, it's not a shop that is particularly friendly to them. And those people, I'm more than happy to help them find Comixology or Amazon or wherever else. But yeah, I really hope that hearing what we're doing and hearing about our need for some help on that front is enough to influence people to go out and pick it up.
Well, actually, I was going to say, so like your trades are sold out. So does that count? Do they care, or does it they only care about individual floppies that are being sold month by month right now for the new stuff?
I mean, they definitely care. The individual floppies are a little easier to calculate, the difference, the impact that we've had. But I think the trades matter. I think it's a little hard to tell immediately how big an impact we have because even, wherever people are getting them, whether it be at a local shop or from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever, they're all coming from Diamond. So, if Diamond still has them in stock, they'll unfortunately slowly refill places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and any comic shop that reorders stuff. But it takes a little longer to see those numbers come through, I think. So for folks who want to support the comic, does it only matter for them to buy the most recent issues, or does it help for folks to buy? Because or to put in pre-orders, or does it help to buy any of it in general? I think it helps to buy everything. Everything that's out there, is definitely a mark in our column. I think pre-ordering stuff specifically is a very good way to show that increased interest to help out there. So, if you put in a pre-order either for the single issues or for the next volume, which is already solicited, it's already available to pre-order on Amazon as well, that definitely sends a message to the publisher. But every book that we sell, is a book that we sell, really makes a difference.
Well, I'm glad that Action Lab thinks about it this way, because there's definitely other publishers who literally only care about pre-orders for whatever's the next month's floppy, which is a surefire way to tank any comic that doesn't have a Wednesday Warrior, white guy in his 30s and older kind of audience. So yay.
Yeah.
Well, definitely one of the spaces that it feels like there's a lot of active fans of your comic is on Tumblr, and you always do such a great job of doing the fan interactions there. And again, I think that one of the reasons why the comic is needing at least to be popular on Tumblr is because of the romantic subplot. I mean, you're talking about a social media space where people will pull out those ship-worthy panels from comics that aren't even about these things and post around them. And here we have a comic that has ships on a ship. Didn't know I was going there until I went there, Jeremy. I'm sorry. That was really terrible.
Not the first time.
Terrible.
It won't be the last.
I'm sorry?
I said it's not the first time, and it won't be the last.
So, I think that's part of finding the audience. What do you think makes for a good romantic subplot?
I think, caring about the characters in the first place is definitely an important ingredient of that. I think offering sort of diverse romances, something that's, different than what people are seeing in other places. Certainly, in our book, we have several female-female romances, which it's not that rare in comics, but it's rare in certain types of comics. If you go to SPX, you're going to get one of those on pretty much every table. But if you go to your shop on any given Wednesday, you probably won't see a lot of that. You definitely won't see it in a lot of YA and all ages books. So I think giving people something different, giving people something that they can relate to, and to some extent, building a romance is important. Because you don't want to fake people out. You don't want to bait people into thinking a thing's going to be a thing that isn't a thing. But you do want to take the time to kind of build it up and make sure that it feels natural to the characters and that people are invested in it. The romantic subplot between Raven and Jimena has been going on since the third issue at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Or honestly, we sort of touch on that in the flashback. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's definitely something that's ongoing, and they're both to some extent hopeless. There's real obstacles in there, from their past, but there's also the obstacles of both of them being sort of horribly bad at being in love with each other.
And there also being other romantic interests for them there that are all great. Like, how do you even choose,
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing is, like, there's that established relationship from the beginning, but then there's Sunshine, who, like,
mm-hmm.
she's very good at, liking Raven, and makes it very clear to her, and is a rogue in all the best ways. So I think that complicates things a lot, and it was funny to me as I started writing the book and it started coming out, is that I was very invested from the beginning in like the Raven and Helena relationship, and after that first volume, I had a lot of people that were like, "Oh no, definitely Raven and Sunshine, like that's the good one. That's the one we want to see happen." And I was like, "Really? I was pretty sure that I was trying to convince you otherwise." But I think that character is so both charismatic and both so. I mean, she's in a lot of ways she's kind of a sad puppy too. You want her to feel good. You want her to be happy because she is so obviously invested in this.
Yeah. I think fans are sometimes just going to go in the direction that we're going to go in. I feel like that was. I don't want to have to choose. I don't like everybody, but I enjoy all these relationships. And then, well, you know what? I want to put a pin on the current state of affairs so that we don't do spoilers quite yet. So let's talk a little bit about Sea of Thieves. Tell me, how did that series get started?
So that was this really cool setup in which I knew about Sea of Thieves already. The game was getting ready to come out, and I'd seen a lot of like early clips and stuff about it. I was really interested in it, and I've been a big fan of games by Rare for years. I mean, I grew up on Donkey Kong Country and stuff like that. So at some point earlier this year, or I guess last year, Titan contacted me, saying they were looking to do this comic for the Sea of Thieves game. They were interested in me sort of pitching what I would want to do with it, and like it was immediately something I was excited to check out. I think the most interesting thing about pitching it was that it is a massive multiplayer online RPG. So there is no central character. The central character for your story is you, whatever character you make. So while there's this big established world with mythology and everything, there's not a character that I have to like figure out and jump into. We had to sort of decide what kind of story we wanted to tell and create the characters that we wanted to tell the story with. So that was really fun. I knew, like, at least for this initial story, we're doing a 4-issue miniseries. We're going to see, how it goes, how it tells from there. But the doing a 4-issue story, I wanted to do something that was going to give us a chance to, keep driving, keep going forward through the whole thing, get to explore a lot of the world in a short time. So created the story that's a race. Basically, there's these two pirates, a brother and a sister, who are the son and daughter of this great, renowned, beloved pirate, and they both sort of get an invitation to come to this bar to get a map to the Sea of Thieves, which is a sort of mystical land full of magic and treasure, where their father has disappeared to long ago at this point. And from there they both sort of get a map to, or they're both supposed to get a map to where their father's gold is. But from the beginning, they immediately start sort of backstabbing each other and trying to get in each other's way and trying to claim the gold for themselves. Is an interesting challenge because basically we get to introduce the entire concept of the game, the story, and 2 crews worth of characters, which ends up being 8 characters total within the span of the first issue, and manage to tell what's hopefully a satisfying 4-issue story by the end of it. It's a big challenge. I like things that challenge me writing wise, and it's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't know the video game. I wasn't familiar with the setting or anything, but it definitely feels like a Jeremy Whitley comic. It has the banter, the backstabbing, the pirates, and lots of female characters.
Yeah, I think Rare did a really great job with the game of making it really friendly to everybody, and that you get to create the kind of character you want. So you can have a male or a female character. And specifically, one of the things that I like is that you get to decide, how your character looks and dresses. So it is entirely possible if you want to have a, not particularly gendered character, to have a female character who dresses conservatively or a male character who doesn't. You can make your characters any size you want, any shape you want. They allow for a wide variety of character creation, which a lot of games don't. So I wanted to sort of reflect that in our characters. So it's sort of evenly split male and female characters, and there are a lot of different shapes, sizes, ethnicities. They all look pretty distinctive, which I think is also helpful when you're trying to introduce 8 new characters in 4 issues and have everybody keep them straight.
Yeah, definitely having the different faces and designs. I feel like I remember when I met Rebecca Sugar at Comic-Con, and it was right before Steven Universe was released, and I said, I noticed, I said to her, like, I think it's so fabulous that you have these characters with these very different figures, which is, not something you get to see that much in cartoons or in anything. And she said, well, it's better character design to have characters with different bodies. And I'm like, yes, and as an added bonus, it looks more like people who you would see. So that's definitely something that, I see throughout all of your comics, actually.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that's something I definitely try to do a lot. I think it's one of those areas where trying to tell stories with diverse characters and making good comics intersects fairly, has a sort of a one-to-one Venn diagram, because, not only, does that cover you for, having diverse characters, but if your characters have distinctive designs and different shapes and sizes in those, panels that you have to do, which are long shots or group shots, it's very easy to tell them apart. I think that's somewhere where I find a lot of licensed comics have problems. When the Buffy comics first started coming out after the show ended, my wife was reading those religiously, but there would be places where you'd have sort of the whole cast of the show, which they're very easy to tell the difference of when you're watching the show, but because when you're reading a comic and there are 3 blonde white guys of sort of average height at a medium distance, it's which one of those is Oz and which one is Xander and which one is I can't tell who's who in this story.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason in shows you do hear people complain about things like, for example, in Game of Thrones, oh, these guys have brown hair, white skin, and beards, and I actually can tell people apart because I pay attention to people's face shapes, which is something that apparently even a lot of artists seem to be blind to. But it's at least in the shows generally, you do have different face shapes, and then a lot of times in comics, artists will give literally the same exact ratio of eyes to nose to cheek, the layout of the face for every character, and I don't understand why that's just something that people do. Yeah,
and I've certainly pointed out that there are particular artists out there who have particular faces that they gravitate towards, especially female faces, where, you know, every female face is sort of a recolored version of the same face.
and their idea of what is attractive is so narrow that it doesn't even actually reflect what people beyond they themselves might find to be attractive. By the way, I can literally hear an echo of everything I'm saying. Do you hear that?
I do not.
Okay. Well, that's good. Moving along. Which brings me to everyone's favorite character from Raven, which is Katie King. I think when you were first on the show to talk about this, and the series did get brought up, you talked about her being sort of physically inspired by Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, but also not tortured feeling. Although they definitely share a very hard-working philosophy, loyalty, and sort of honor-bound, duty-bound approach to the world. Yeah, but there's this amazing issue, I guess, midway through season 1, where one of the other characters tells her, like, look, you just need to know that everyone has a crush on you. And there was this wonderful moment of this, like, character who you can see how, especially some dialogue with her mom, if I'm not mistaken, from earlier in the series, has sort of been told that people wouldn't find her attractive because she's like a large, strong woman. It's like, that's actually not true at all. Everybody's coddling you all the time. And then you rewarded us with giving us yet another panel of her steering in her tank top. So thank you for understanding our needs, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, I think it's sort of funny in that I started writing this character as, specifically like Brienne of Tarth, and that she's large and muscular, broad-shouldered. Without all of the issues that Brienne of Tarth has as a character, she's very obviously down on herself, and has a lot of things that have been drilled into her by the sort of social contracts and social conventions in that story, which I didn't want to give too much of to Katie. I wanted her to not particularly see herself as attractive, but for it not necessarily to be a thing that she considers. And then, there is, at the beginning of the second year, there's a big fight with her and my unfortunately named villain, Melancholy Johnny, who insults her and talks trash about her size and everything. And it's sort of, you get to see her kind of come out of her shell to some extent and talk herself up. But you also get to see that there are definitely people who find her attractive, who are into her, and that's a thing that we've sort of revisited a couple of times, and fans have definitely been interested in. I don't know if you've seen, Sora did a cover for year 2. I think it was issue 2 or issue 3, where it's sort of a very beefcakey cover of Katie, climbing the climbing the mast. So that was something I specifically I wanted to go, something more beefcakey and less cheesecakey on her pinup.
And that's exactly what we wanted. And by we mean me and people like me, so thank you. And it's not just her, right? You really do have a range of gender expression among the characters, and women of different sizes and shapes. And, I mean, all of your artists have been able to handle that, right away.
Yeah, and I think, I think Ro had a huge crush on Katie, too. Your artists are also not super senior people in the industry, so it shows you that, these artists who are new, they know how to do this. So I don't know what's with the excuses for some of the other people out there. Yeah, I don't know. I think, for a lot of creators, be they artists or writers, they get locked into doing a thing the way they think is the right way, and they don't stop to consider that, not only may that not be the right way, but there may be more than one way to do it correctly. And I think, you see those reactions from people, not just in our stuff, but Stepan Sejic is, I think, somebody that, like, people see his stuff and there's this sort of love for, these things that I think some of the more conservative or white male or antagonistic people in comics would think that, the rest of us wouldn't like, but they're done with a level of respect and characterization that, like, is good and interesting and tells you things about the characters other than boobs,
Yeah, thank you. That's very well said. I think maybe we can go into perhaps a more spoiler section, perhaps, of the episode tonight. One of the things that I've been really excited to see in the more recent issues is you're introducing a story about what happens to Sunshine after she gets, what we believe, drowns off the side of the boat, but is in fact in a domed domicile under the sea. And you start with this amazing, sort of fantasy story of this idealized place where there's a queen and she rescues all the women who've been thrown away. And you think it's going to be going in one direction in terms of how it's going to be thinking about, like, abuse and manipulation, but you are not doing that. You're doing something different instead. It was really quite an awesome revelation, really.
Well, thank you.
So I'm really appreciating the sort of reveal here with when it turns out that the benefactor, the queen who runs the island, is perhaps manipulating people, and I don't know. It's sort of I love this idea of this, like, idealized place. It does seem like it's like this feminist refuge from the world, but it's also, sort of another place where people are being manipulated with emotionally in different ways. Sort of, what's sort of your desire going into that story?
So I wanted to, to some extent, I wanted to, break the crew up a little bit and I wanted to give Sunshine a chance to sort of shine as a character away from the, love triangle relationship, which I felt like was making her slowly into more of a villain as the story went on, and give her a chance to sort of have a different option, as far as life and romance and everything. And that's sort of where that sprung up, is, we sort of, she goes off the side of the boat, she can't swim, and it looks like, she's died, but she's rescued by these mermaids that work for the queen that runs this island called the Heart of the Sea. And the Heart of the Sea, it's a little difficult to tell from what we've set up, and it is not quite underwater, but is surrounded by this sort of wall of storms. So it's inaccessible from the outside. So basically, these are all women who have, been lost at sea in some way and has been rescued by these mermaids and brought back to this place where they're sort of part of a collection, which the queen has established here. And it's odd in that it is sort of it is a utopia, like it is, a place where Sunshine can be and enjoy herself and have, romantic escapades, and several of the other characters there are too. and you not have to do anything, not have to fight or steal or deal with men for that matter. But there's I think we sort of hint a little bit at the end of issue 6 that like there is some manipulation going on there, and like I think the question is whatever's going on bad enough or negative enough for like it to be worth rebelling against? And to some extent, because Sunshine is who she is, the answer to that is almost always going to be yes.
Yes.
Yeah. If it seems like somebody is trying to make her turn left, regardless of whether all the good stuff, everything that she wants is on the left. If she feels like she's being pushed that way, she's going to go right, even if there's no good reason. Because somebody is manipulating her, she's going to push back. And she's sort of gotten this question of like, what does she do now? Like she knows, she sort of settles into this good life over the course of the few weeks that she's there, and sort of accepts that she's separated from her crew and she's probably not going to be able to get back to them. She doesn't know where they are or where she is in relation to them. And so, like, she has this other option. She can live what seems to be a pretty happy life, but she sort of gets this feeling that the strings are being pulled, and that, immediately sits poorly with her. So she's very much at a crossroads going into, she's not in issue 7 at all, which is the upcoming issue, which is going to focus on everybody back on the ship. But issue 8, she's going to have to choose which direction she's going.
Thank you. I feel like that's definitely carried by the text, and I like the way you talk about it. So thank you for jumping in there. I've been joking a lot about how much I've enjoyed some of the background characters in action that you see sort of in the Under the Sea Dome, including the exciting romantic adventures of Background Centaur. And since we know that like Raven got her own spin-off series because she appeared in Princeless, I'm wondering if the centaur woman we see flirting with a potential paramour in the background of issue 6 of season 2. Perhaps she will deserve her own spin-off of her dating exploits.
We'll see. Well, it's interesting to me because that issue, I was saying that we need to have a whole bunch of women in the background of this story. They're on this island that they need to have all sorts of different backgrounds and look all sorts of different ways. And I'm not even sure if I suggested that there be a centaur, but I got those pages.
Hello? Oh no, I don't hear you. Hold on one second. Okay, so Jeremy got dropped. I'm going to message him right now and tell him he needs to call right back in. I apologize. Bear with us, listeners. I would really love to have a real audio engineer and not just be airing this show live. That would be amazing. Oh, here we go.
All right.
And you're back.
I'm here. I'm back.
Making a point. Okay. What was that?
Yeah. Sorry. I gave this sort of idea to Christine of that I wanted to have, a variety of background characters, and it came back to me with sort of this unfolding romance in the background between this female centaur and her girlfriend. And I guess if the legions of fans of background female centaur, start a letter writing campaign, I'm sure we'll be able to keep that story going. But yeah, I think that's a great example of Christine sort of taking this idea that I sort of threw out there and making it, really bringing it to life in a way that I wouldn't have. I mean, obviously I didn't think of doing.
I mean, you really have built a fantasy world populated by a bajillion different female characters who are all having their own lives and their own stories in different ways, and are all like coming from different places, and it's amazing. Like you really don't need any men. Although I really do appreciate the way you've dealt with men in Princeless and boys, and sort of the way you've addressed the way that they are limited in their roles and how sexism affects them as well. But I really just like the fact that you can just do this whole series, and it feels like all of these different female characters, including the ones in the background, really have lives of their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's something I definitely wanted to do, and I feel like, I mean, I don't like to toot my own horn about stuff too much, but like, it's definitely something that like comics should be able to do, but is surprisingly rare, in that, you know, it seems to be difficult for some writers to have different female voices in their story, for, you know, their female characters to look and sound and feel like different people. And, you know, that's, I think, you know, we've shown pretty well that it's possible to have an entire cast of very different types of female characters, and you know, even in the background, sort of give them personality, which, you know, a lot of that is owed to having fantastic artists on the book, between, you know, Christine Hipp, who's drawing this volume, and Xenia Pamphil, who drew, you know, the previous volume, and Rosie and Ted, who drew, you know, the first you know, 3 volumes basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's been lots of really great artists who've jumped in on the series and have some really beautiful compositions and layouts. I really love the underwater dome design.
Yeah, I liked. Yeah, it was. I think that's the castle. I think as having the glass walls with the water inside, sort of started out as this like need to solve a problem of like how mermaids can get around in a castle, and you know, ended up being sort of, it went from being a bug to being a feature. You know, you know, we get to play around with having these, you know, glass walls everywhere where you can sort of see the mermaids moving around, but you might not be able to see everything that's behind them.
I love the design on the mermaids as well.
Yeah, that was very intentional. That's something Christine and I went back and forth a bit on, because I wanted to make sure that we had a mermaid that looked both ethnically diverse, but also like different types of fish. Because, you know, I think a lot of that, at least my thinking on that, was inspired by sitting next to Afua Richardson at a lot of conventions, and she has a collection of, you know, black mermaids that she's drawn that are all just these beautiful painted fish designs, these bright oranges and reds and everything, with you know, mixed with having actual diverse skin on the human part. And it's like, man, I'd love to read like stories of mermaids that look like this, rather than all of them looking like, you know, Ariel with slightly different hair color.
Well, thank you for that. Well, Jeremy, again, like I want to be able to make sure that we get more Raven Pirate Princess, and I'm definitely really excited about Sea of Thieves as well. That was a lot of fun. And do you have anything else that you are able to tell us about that's coming up soon?
Well, we are currently getting ready to finish up the 7th volume of Princeless, which will hopefully be started a little later this year. So that is coming along nicely. Emily is drawing it, and Christine, who did this volume of Raven, is actually inking that as well. So this is by far the most beautiful volume of Princeless we've had yet. I think Emily has continued to, you know, step up her game with every volume she does. So this looks really great. I'm really excited about where we're going in this volume. This volume involves the Black Knight pretty heavily. So we finally get to learn more about the Black Knight and who the Black Knight is. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I do have more stuff coming up that I can't talk about yet. We are actually just wrapping up the Legends of Magic series over at My Little Pony, which has been that's been a ton of fun. Where we've got the annual coming out, I think, in the next couple of weeks, and then I'm getting ready to start a mini-series over there that they haven't announced yet, but I think people are going to love when they do announce it. So that's super exciting. And then I think something a lot of people didn't catch the first time that just finally made its way out in the stores in the last couple of weeks is the Thor versus Hulk Champions of the Universe miniseries that I did, which was a Comixology exclusive when it first came out, but it's finally in print, in trade. So anybody that loved Ragnarok or loves goofy, fun Marvel Universe stories, it is that in space. It's a fun sort of competition story between Hulk and Thor, and involves the champion of the universe, who's one of my favorite elders of the universe, a guy that just basically goes from world to world, challenging people to fight.
Wow. And is there, Jeff Goldbluming in it?
No Jeff Goldbluming in it, because the Grandmaster is being used elsewhere in the Marvel universe pretty heavily right now. We wanted to go with the champion, but we actually got to create our own Elder of the Universe to go with him, because I am sometimes a nerd for wrestling stuff. The thing about the champion is that he's a big, tough guy who's not particularly charismatic. And when you get one of those, you need a good promoter to go with him. So we created the Elder of the Universe, the promoter, who I love her dearly. And she has the power to do just about anything that needs to be done as long as she is doing it in aid of somebody else. So she can't go out of her way to help herself, but as long as she's helping the champion, she can manipulate Thor and Hulk pretty much any way she wants to.
Wow, I'm definitely interested now. Well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing about the other things when you're able to announce them. Let our listeners know where they can find your stuff on the Internet.
Well, I am on Twitter at JRome58, so it's JROME 58. I'm also on Tumblr, as you mentioned before, at princelesscomic.tumblr.com, where I'm constantly talking about, Raven and Princeless and Wasp and Sea of Thieves and anything else I might be working on at the moment, which has been fun. And then, obviously, the comics are all available through Comixology, be it Raven or Wasp or Thor versus Hulk, obviously. And then there's a large post on Tumblr about Raven, about saving Raven, which gives a long list of different ways in which people can help and save Raven in various ways.
Cool. Well, I'm going to be sharing that out again, of course, because I have a very strong agenda here. So thank you for joining us on the show again, Jeremy, and I look forward to having you back on again when we can also talk about how you're totally going to get a GLAAD award for Raven. It's my goal. And make that happen. That's my prediction for the next year. And
all right.
So thank you. And so for our listeners, next week we'll be back on Monday. In order to get everyone prepared for the upcoming Avengers Infinity War movie, I will be joined by James Hancock, film critic who does the Wrong Reel podcast. And he is a big expert in Jim Starlin as well as a film critic. So we're going to be sort of doing a pre-Infinity War preview issue where we'll be looking at Jim Starlin's comics that were reflected in Infinity War, i.e. his work on Captain Marvel and Infinity Gauntlet and Madam Warlock and all this other like Bronze Age stuff that really, I should say, that a lot of us might not necessarily know or have read, and in preparing for watching the new movie. And then I'm going to be off at Universal Fan Con in the end of the month, which is brought to you by the folks from the Nerds of Color and Black Girl Nerds. It's like the big diverse media focused fan convention, and I believe Jeremy will be there as well. What booth will they be finding you at?
I do not know my booth number, but I will absolutely be there, and I think I'll be on several panels as well, so I should be very easy to find.
And I will be teaching a workshop on fan activism, so if you've missed one of the ones I did at FlameCon or at AwesomeCon, you should totally come by to this if you want a refresher. I think it'll also just be a great place to meet other fans who, like you, want to go out there, kick some ass, and change the world. So thanks, everybody, and as Brett would say if he were joining us, keep it geeky. Oh, gosh, I shouldn't do the sign-off yet. I forgot to say. I didn't even introduce myself. That was how badly I botched my entry this month, this week, I should say. I'm Ilana Levin, a.k.a. Ilana Brooklyn. I'm on Twitter all the goddamn time, ELANA_Brooklyn. This episode is going to be at graphicpolicy.com, our iTunes channel, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. So if you came in late, you'll be able to listen to the whole thing from the beginning there and share it on those platforms as well. Graphicpolicy.com is our site, comic news, reviews, and essays, and I think really thoughtful content about the intersection of comics and politics that you just won't see everywhere else. So be sure to check out Graphic Policy. And with that, keep it geeky.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.